So what are some words that come to mind when you see a picture like this? Just shout them out. Rest, relax. Anything else? Peace, money, yeah. What else? Sunshine, yeah. Anybody feel a little jealousy? A little envy that they're getting to experience that, or wonder about their lives and how they can afford it? Somebody mentioned money. But then they also see peace came up, and rest and recreation, relaxation. Intimate conversations can happen on stuff like that. How about this picture? What happens when you see this picture? What do you see? Sadness. Anything else? Despair. What else? Addiction. Yeah. What if I told you that these guys are doing something they do in countries around the world every single day? What's the word? Siesta. Yes. So we see this and we think bad. And we think maybe lazy or has issues, or we see negative thoughts. But these guys are actually just taking naps. That's what this is. This is siesta. In Ecuador, Mexico, Greece, Italy, Philippines, Nigeria, and other countries around the world, this is a common practice in the afternoons of these countries. Is they've come to recognize the value of rest. And so scientists have determined that 26 minutes is the optimum siesta. And so they'll take 28 minutes, a minute to fall asleep and a minute to wake up, and they get a 26-minute break right smack in the middle of the afternoon to take a siesta. And so today I want to talk about sí a la siesta, is yes to the siesta, yes to the break, yes to a vacation, yes to rest, yes to recreation, yes to taking a nap, yes to binge watching Netflix, yes to good food with good friends. And I feel like it's an uncommon message in Christian circles. And we've actually made this idea of the siesta, or of rest, one of our 4 pillars. We've consolidated our pillars to create the 4th pillar, which is rest. Service, study, worship, and rest. And we think rest is an important part of the Christian journey. There's an organization called the National Association of Friends of the Siesta, and they put on festivals and competitions, I think annually. And I believe it takes place in Spain. And they have all these different competitions about who is the best at the siesta. And they have the events like who can sleep as much in 20 minutes, like who gets the most deep sleep in a 20. So they hook up these EKGs or whatever they're called to the brain, or they monitor people's sleep. I guess they could do it with wrist stuff nowadays, but they monitor sleep and they say go, and everybody tries to go to sleep. And they sleep for as long as they can during the 20 minutes, and then the alarm goes off and wakes everybody up. And the winner is the one who got the most deep sleep during those 20 minutes. And some of those people, like you see in these pictures, they must be really good at it. I mean, they just fall over wherever they're at and snooze. They have competitions for the most original sleeping positions. I don't know what these positions might be, but it's fun to think about. They have competitions for the loudest snore. So somebody who falls asleep and is legitimately snoring, they measure the decibels. And the winner of these competitions wins big money. Like the last time that I read about, they won 1,000 euros, which is about $1,500 for sleeping the most, snoring the loudest, and sleeping in the most awkward, awful positions. But we, as Americans, we balk at the siesta. We say that's work time. That's 20 minutes that we could have been manufacturing cars or teaching kids or whatever it is that we do, and we kind of balk at those things and say that's a negative. We view rest as like we have this inherent view that rest is laziness and that we ought to be working harder. There's an author, and I want to recommend his book. It's called Rest, Why You Get More Done When You Work Less, by Alex Sujong Kim Pong. And he's written a book where he has thoroughly researched the benefits of rest and what it does to a culture and what it does to a society and what it does to an individual when you have rest or when you don't. And he says this about where we live now. He says, the competing demands of work and home, of colleagues and children, leave us with no time to ourselves. This is important. Technologies that promise to make our work flexible instead chain us and create the expectation that we'll always be accessible to clients, colleagues, and children. A perpetually uncertain economy requires us to accept these terms or be replaced. In a 24/7, always-on world, the concept of turning off is an anachronism. An anachronism is something that's outdated. It's been done away with. And so we view this idea of rest, the siesta, of actually legitimately taking time and getting away from work as old-fashioned. In our high-drive society, we don't need it. In 1899, this guy, William James, wrote an article called The Gospel of Relaxation, and he describes what happens to us when we live in this high-drive society. He says, what mental mood when we're over-contracted, so when we have too much on our plate, He says, what mental mood can you be in but one of inner panting and expectancy? The absence of repose, this bottled lightning quality, overtension and jerkiness and breathlessness and intensity and agony of expression. Good writers will tell you that that's a major run-on sentence, but sometimes rules are meant to be broken. And he's trying to illustrate something through the run-on sentence right now, that this is what life looks like. It's agony, it's terrible, it's awful, it's worse than it could be. And he's doing it through creative writing. But he says that when you got too much on your plate, there's nowhere for you to go but to be stressed. There's nowhere for you to go but to be freaked out all the time. That stress and tension is a natural and kind of inescapable result of having too much on your plate. And he says the cause is bad habits. He says nothing more. Nothing more, nothing less. It's caught from the social atmosphere. It's kept up by tradition. Is idealized by many as the admirable way of life. The last straws that break the camel's back, the final overflowers of our measure of wear and tear and fatigue. I think that overflower word is pretty interesting. If you've seen time-lapse photography of flowers opening up when the sun comes up. And when I visualize this overflower thing, I see it opening and opening and opening until it falls away. And that's what he's saying. He's not saying work is a bad thing. He's saying overwork is a really bad thing. He's saying there's nothing left but fatigue and stress when you don't allow yourself rest. The original author we were talking about says this: we wear stress and overwork like fancy jewelry. What do we say when somebody says, how you doing? A lot of us were like, oh, I'm doing great, man, stressed. Boy, a lot going on at work. I mean, I'm just crazy. And what we're really doing it is, I want, in some sense, not fully, in some sense it's a cry for help. But in some sense, we're also saying, look how important I am. I'm working. Man, I'm working. I'm beating the street. I'm getting it done. And we wear it like jewelry. We wear it like a claim to fame. And I think Scripture would say that's not jewelry. That's unhealthy. And we have to get away from it. And the church is no different. I was involved in a church for a long time where we had Sunday morning services and Sunday night services and Wednesday night services. And legitimately, we went out and did outreach every single day at lunch on my university campus. We would go at lunchtime and do surveys with people and find out about their spiritual needs. We would do it Monday through Friday. Then we had our Thursday night social, and then we had our Friday night gig. And I mean, it was all consuming. And there was also this sense that if you missed something, you were a little bit unspiritual. Like, what was wrong with you that you're not showing up at this Friday night event? What is wrong with you that you wouldn't show up at Sunday night service? And there's this it's like the author said earlier, they're bad habits created by a social atmosphere. It's this social atmosphere that says you got to work, you got to drive, you got to strive, and you got to do it in your spiritual life. And think about what that does internally to our spiritual lives when it just says work, 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 and how that goes against the gospel that says the gospel is one of rest in Jesus. It's one of letting Him do the work. I heard this quote this week that said, we live in a civilization that demeans and mocks rest. If you call somebody and say, hey, what are you doing? Man, I'm laying in a hammock in my backyard reading a book and drinking some hot chocolate. We think, well, that must be nice. Well, you must be a lazy good-for-nothing, right? We don't think, good for you. Man, fantastic. You're doing what you were designed to do. Those thoughts never enter our mind. In some sense, we think, well, it must be nice. And so we tie burdens on people. We tie chains on people that say, you got to work, you got to work, you got to work, you got to show up, you got to do this, you got to do that. Like that's healthy in some way. You can't go through life like this. Even in a community, even mutually pulling the tire still wears you out. There's got to be a space for rest. There's a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality I want to recommend by Peter Scazzaro. And in my defense, I was on a swing when I underlined this. And I thought, man, you're just really lousy at underlining stuff. He says, when people have authentic spiritual experiences such as worship, prayer, Bible studies, and fellowship, they mistakenly believe they are doing fine, even if their relational life is fractured and their interior world is disordered. In church, we have this sense that if you do, go, strive, push, that everything is healthy. If you're showing up for worship services, if you're showing up for small group, that everything is just fine. And a lot of people, that's part of the reason their life is decaying, is because they don't take time for themselves. They don't take time for their family, for their friendships, to reinvigorate the mind, to find the inner muse. They don't take time to do that. And sometimes the church is to blame. And so from the very beginning of Daylight Church, we wanted to be very careful about that. We've wanted to make things simple. We've wanted to make things somewhat easy, challenging. I hope when you come in here, I hope you're challenged today. I hope we challenge one another constantly. But not this driving, striving, gotta show up, gotta do, gotta be type church. It's just not the church we ever wanted to be. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He said, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." He says, "For my burden is easy and my yoke is light." Now, there's this dichotomy when it comes to Jesus, is that when you give up everything and you go to a cross, there's nothing easy about that. But somehow Jesus seems to indicate that this journey was not one of striving. In fact, dying is pretty easy. Dying to self and going to a cross is pretty, you just let it happen. So there's this mix in Christianity of something sacrificial that is difficult. I'm not saying you shouldn't face a life that's difficult, because you should. What I am saying is that you've got to make time. You've got to rest. You've got to recreate. It's part of the Christian journey. From the very beginning, it says, God said, "Let there be light," and there was. And then God said, "Let there be earth," and there was. And God said, "Let the waters part so that the earth can come up, and let the animals be born. Let the sun, let the moon." God just spoke all these things into existence, and then we all know what happened next. What happened? No, on the 8th day, God created rock and roll. That's what happened. That's what Kiss claims. But on the 7th day, it says in Genesis, it says, on the 7th day, God ended his work, which he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work, which he had done. Then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work, which God had created and made. Now, any decent theology on God recognizes that God did not need to rest. Omnipotence doesn't require repose. Instead, what we'll find and what we'll talk about later is that God was setting a standard for us. God was concerned about the creatures that were to come, and that he had already created, and he was concerned about us, so he set a standard. He said, "You're going to rest." That's part of what you do. There's the story of Moses in the Ten Commandments, and Moses comes down from the mountain, and he's been on the mountain for several days, and he comes down, and all the people are worshiping these idols, and he's ticked off, so he smashes the Ten Commandments and goes back up the mountain and gets them printed out again and comes back down. And it's stuff that we all know. The Ten Commandments: don't worship other gods, don't create idols, honor your mom and dad, don't murder people. This is basically a pretty good rule, right? Don't steal, don't sleep with people that aren't your spouse, and so forth. There are these rules that, whether you're humanist, secular humanist, or whether you're Christian, in general, these rules make sense for human thriving, right? And then right smack in the middle of all these rules, he says this. It says, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God." And Sabbath, we get the same word Sabbath from the same root word of sabbatical. It means a stopping of everything. That's what it's talking about. And it says, "On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, your livestock." So even your cows are supposed to be rested, which farmers will tell you is a healthy thing. "Or the sojourner who is within your gates." So even a person who has come that is maybe an indentured servant who has come in and taking advantage of your hospitality, foreigners that you're taking care of. He says, everybody rests on day 7. So in this list that includes don't steal, don't lie, don't kill, he says don't overwork. It's right there. And think about this. God could have said anything in his commandments. And right smack, 1/10 of the commandments were, every 7th day, I want you to do nothing. And it's to the point where later on, people got a hold of this thing and would stone you to death for cooking grain. They just really tripped out about it. They took it way too far. But the goal was, God said, you are people who need to replenish. And I'm creating a system so that you can do that. So let's talk about some of the benefits, both mentally and physically, of good rest. And scientists have studied rest, they've studied sleep, they've studied naps, the siesta, they've studied recreation, they've studied good, healthy, not overly strenuous exercise and so forth. And there's just list after list of why good rest and recreation is healthy for you. And it increases your memory and your ability to learn. Let's full stop, boom, we're done. We don't talk about anything else. You learn better when you're well rested. And we talked a couple weeks ago about the importance of study, that we are constantly improving our minds, that's part of what Christianity is the transforming of the mind. And scientists would all, as far as I know, people who study this topic would say rest improves your memory and your ability to learn. And you guys have probably experienced it. If you went to college and you pulled an all-nighter, you know by the end of that thing, everything is just fuzzy. I mean, it's just hard to remember anything after you haven't had sleep for a while, after you haven't been rested and recreated and rejuvenated. And so science will tell us that your ability to remember and your ability to learn hinge on you being well rested. You have higher energy levels. Everybody wants more energy? Rest. It seems contradictory. We think if I work and work and work and work, then I'll get a lot done. That's not the truth. The truth is if you'll work and rest, then you'll have more energy for work and you'll accomplish more than you would have had you just worked and worked and worked and worked. Rest is a key component of work. Your body repairs itself on a cellular level much better. You're going to be healthier in general. Your hormones will be more in balance, lower stress and anxiety, better moods, lower blood pressure. Your immune system is improved, better cardiovascular. You're going to be closer to your friends and family, and you're going to feel better about yourself. So here's my question. You're going to hire a contractor to build your house. Which one do you want? Look at the negatives of all these. Do you want a contractor who is working, and so he's not well rested, in which case his memory is not as good? His ability to learn isn't as good. His energy levels are lower. Do you want a contractor with lower energy levels or somebody who's up high when they need to be? And you go through this list. Do you want your contractor to have higher stress and anxiety, to be in a worse mood, his blood pressure to be freaked out, his immune system caving in? He's ruining his friends and family, and he doesn't feel too good about it. I mean, is that the guy you want to work with, or is it the guy who's well rested and that can get the job done, right? So when you're building a physical house, you want someone well rested. You don't know that you want that, but you do. I used to have a contractor that worked for me sometimes, and every now and then he just rubbed me the wrong way because he would take I remember he was building a stairwell for us, and it was this intricate stairwell where everything had to be exactly perfect. And he would pull up a chair, and he would sit, and he would look at this stairwell. And I'm telling you, he would sit and stare at that stairwell for an hour to an hour and a half. And I thought, you are so lazy, right? But I'm telling you, Gary Royal was his name. When Gary got the job done, it was done right. He took longer than the average guy because he would sit. I mean, just sit. As a contractor that I'm paying, he would sit. But the thing is, when he was done, there were no mistakes. He didn't have to go back and fix anything. He would take the time to concentrate, to rest, to let his mind churn over this thing. Instead of just literally hammering it out, he would get it done. So, in a contractor that you're hiring to build your house, you want someone well rested. Now let's take it to something figurative, something spiritual. What person do you want building your house? What person do you want building the dwelling that you live in, your life, your worldview, your family life, your friendships? Do you want somebody that's stressed out, whose immune system is failing, who's in a bad mood all the time, who can't remember because they're not well rested? Is that the person you want building your life? Probably not. And what that means is rest there's no escaping the value of rest. There's no escaping the necessity of rest in your life. A lack of rest is the enemy of work, the enemy of nature, and the enemy of concentration. It's the enemy of work because you can't get the job done as well when you're not well rested. It's the enemy of concentration because when everything's foggy, you can't think clearly. And it's the enemy of nature because we were creatures created to be cyclical. We were creatures who were designed to have bursts. And some of you, first thing in the morning is when your energy levels are the highest. Sometimes, some people, they're night owls. Last thing at night is the times your energy are highest. But regardless of who you are, you're a person who lives on a cycle. You're a person who has bursts of energy and strength and mental concentration, and then you have times where you have to crash. You have to slow down. Your body, it's inescapable. But what happens is we try to keep that drive, keep that energy, and make that our entire lives, partially because we idolize it, partially because we view work as worth. But it doesn't work because you're cyclical. So it's against nature to avoid rest. William James, who we quoted earlier, talks about mental hygiene. And when we talk about dental hygiene, what we're talking about is as you eat, your teeth get crusted over with stuff, and you're supposed to go in and clean them out and brush them and do what it is to get your teeth clean. And he says your mind needs the same thing. Your mind needs time to repair. Your mind needs time to float and slow down and recreate. And it's just as necessary for your brain as dental floss is for your teeth. You have to have rest where your brain can slow down. The author we've been quoting says this. He says, you cannot work well without resting well. Some of history's most creative people whose achievements in art and science and literature are legendary, took rest very seriously. They found out that in order to realize their ambitions, to do the kind of work they wanted to, they needed rest. The right kinds of rest would restore their energy while allowing their muse, that mysterious part of their minds that helps drive the creative process, to keep going. I'm always amused when the President of the United States goes golfing, and it doesn't matter whether it's Trump or Obama or Clinton or Bush. It doesn't matter who it is. People freak out when they go golfing. People think, why, there's so many problems in the world, why, or they take off to Martha's Vineyard for a weekend to be with their family. And people are like, well, there's war, there's chaos, there's this, that. And they complain. They complain about the president taking rest. And if anybody needs it, it's the President of the United States. But that signifies how we view rest as a culture. It signifies how we there's two descriptions and two definitions for lazy. One, lazy means avoiding work. And we almost always ascribe that definition to the word lazy. The other definition, anybody have an idea of what the other definition of lazy might be? Anybody want to yell something out? Carefree. Chilling. It's really slow pace. So if you go to Kentucky Kingdom right now, they have the lazy river. Now, does that mean the people on the river are worthless? Like they're just avoiding work? Or is that a positive thing when you get on the lazy river? It's a lazy river because it just slowly floats you through, and that's what it means. And we need to be aware of those definitions of laziness, that there is nothing unhealthy about getting on the lazy river now and then. In fact, there's something very healthy about making sure you end up there. This guy, who I just want to be because of his name, Santiago Ramon y Cajal, and I feel like I have to do this when I say his name. I don't know why. But he looks like he belongs in a commercial somewhere, probably a bourbon commercial or something like that, like the most interesting man on earth. But he was a neurosurgeon and a pathologist in the late 1800s. So think about where neurosurgery must have been in the late 1800s, and you do not want to go under that knife, right? But he was a well-respected surgeon in his day, and he wrote a book for other surgeons and for other students of medicine. And in it, he talks about the transition that was occurring in their society and how science is changing. And this is what he has to say. He says, no longer can scientists concentrate for extended periods of time on one subject or think deeply in the silence of the study, confident that rivals would not disrupt their tranquil meditations. He says, research is now frantic. So in the late 1800s, he's saying money is taking over. Grants are taking over. Everybody has to get the job done because somebody's getting paid. And that's what was happening in medicine back then. Imagine what it's like now. Do scientists really have the freedom to sit and stare at the stairs for a while? To really think these things over, to make sure that the pills they distribute are safe? Or is there this drive that it's got to get done, it's got to get done, it's got to get done? And there's this underlying wickedness underneath it. And it's a systematic problem. And a lot of it, the part of the surface level problem of that underlying wickedness is you got to get it done. You got to get it done. Get it on my table. Get it when the deadline says. Even if people suffer, get it done because money is on the line. And that's the world we live in. I don't know the answer, but this world of drive is not just destroying our health. It's not just destroying our ability to concentrate. It's systematically destroying everyone. It's a big issue, this fear of rest, of the word lazy. Oscar Wilde, the famous poet and satirist and comedian, well, humorist actually, he says, we live in the age of the overworked and the undereducated. We want people to go, 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 do, do, do. So what does it look like in your life? What does it mean for you to take time for rest? And it varies. It's going to be different for Andrew and Chanel than it is for me, than it is for Jordan. It's going to be different for every single person. So if you have a job where you sit in front of a computer every day and you don't get much physical activity, you don't get your blood pumping, people would say a good recreation thing for you would be to find a sport that you enjoy, whether it's tennis or basketball, bowling, whatever it is, something that gets you moving gets your heart rate up. Now, some of you have no interest in basketball. It's not your gig. It's not your thing, and that's fine. The point is that you find something that allows your brain to shut off, your body to recreate or rest. And if you've been sitting all day, you need physical activity to recreate. You need recreation that will stimulate your body. If you've been on your feet all day, working all day, like my friend David Rudolph, who we were talking about, he works in cars, and when they come down the assembly line and there's something wrong with the car, he fixes what is wrong with the car. He uses his body constantly. Odds are what he needs to recreate is to slow down, to sit down, and to do nothing. And so it's going to vary from person to person. You might be into cars. You might a coffee break at work. It might be totally recreational for you to sit down and find a magazine about cars and read about cars and drink some coffee over your coffee break. It might be that simple. But what I'm saying is you've got to make this a priority in your life. You've got to make the ability to rest and to breathe and to recreate a priority. Some of you, it's binge watching Netflix. I kind of wonder if I'm the only pastor in the country today talking about how I'm encouraging you to binge watch. Now, all these stock photos really crack me up because somebody said, "Here, let's put some popcorn on your chest." like she's like one of those infomercials where you can't do anything. You're like not a normal human being. And, I don't know why, but there's something super healthy about shutting down your brain for some people. Now, some of you, the idea of sitting watching 3 hours of television just destroys you. Like, I couldn't possibly. Some of you, it's just what the doctor ordered, and it's exactly what you need. And I'm never going to be one to complain about that. Now, right here in this room right now, because I would encourage anyone to binge watch Netflix, we all have this idol of work in us, and it raises our hackles a little bit. We're like, how could he possibly? How could he possibly encourage somebody to waste so many hours? Even though you sit at home and waste so many hours, we still have this perception that there's something wrong with rest. It might be grilling out alone or with friends. If you're an introvert, you want to grill out alone. If you're an extrovert, you want to grill out with friends. But you got to make time. Listen to those words. Make time. It means you've got to create time for rest. And it can be anything, plants, goldfish, or pressure washing. My wife is into plants. She loves doing landscaping. When she says, "Will you help me carry these plants or will you help me bury these plants?" I think, no. For her, it's recreational. For me, not even a little bit. You might be into fish tanks. For me, it's cleaning out a fish tank every month or whatever it takes. It might be your thing. It's not going to be my thing. You got to find your thing. I've found that pressure washing really does something for me. There's like this immediate thing where I'm pressure washing bricks and all of a sudden they're clean and they were dirty before and it's beautiful and it looks like art to me. And it's just mindless. I put on a podcast and I'm pressure washing the walls. And you put me with a pressure washer, man, I'm recreating. And it's work. So there's some things that take work and still recreate. And the goal is that you find out what that stuff is for you. What is it that gets your juices flowing? What is it that gets you concentrating, that makes you want to tackle life again? And you got to pursue those things. It might be yoga for you. And I use this picture mostly because the author we've been talking about talks about how rest is something that occurs by accident in most people's lives. And he compares it to breathing. And he says everybody breathes, it comes naturally, but few do it well. And he talks about breathing, and he says disciplined breathing is one of the most powerful tools we have to counter stress, fear, and distraction. Learning to breathe more deeply helps athletes compete harder. It helps soldiers and sailors remain calm in battle. It helps musicians sing with greater control. It enables actors and politicians to project their voices. And so there's a difference between breathing that is unintentional and accidental and breathing that is purposeful and practiced. And it's the same way with rest. Rest will happen by accident when you wipe yourself out and you have to because you're cyclical in nature, crash and burn. That's going to happen in everybody's life. So you might even think you're doing a good job of resting because you come home and you binge watch Netflix and you think, "Oh, I got this nailed." Not if it's because you just can't do anything else. Rest is something intentional and purposeful, like breathing. It'll make you better if you do it right. If you want to rest, you have to take it. This world will suck up every minute of your time. This world of go, 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 drive, drive, drive will get in your brain and make you feel like lazy is the antithesis of good. And sometimes lazy can be very healthy. So I want to encourage guilt-free recreation. We talk about recreation, and we automatically, something in us as Americans view it as a negative. We view it as, which is really funny because it's kind of what we're all striving for, because we're so screwed up in our heads about recreation and rest that we have this system of guilt, this cycle of guilt that goes in us, because we think what I really want to do is get to the weekend so that I can enjoy the barbecue, so that I can do this, whatever it is, binge watch Netflix or knit or whatever it is. And so we have this idea that work is the part we despise, rest is the part we enjoy. But then that comes with this inner weird cycle of guilt that says I shouldn't enjoy the recreation. I ought to be more of a worker because that's what a successful human being does. Instead, we just need to recognize that work and rest are healthy parts of humanity. Healthy parts of what it means to be human is to take time to rest. Paul Harvey used to have or didn't used to have, it's still available. You can look it up. He says, if I were the devil. There's this long article about if I were the devil. And some of it's pretty political, so I'm not pitching his speech, but that phrase, if I were the devil, has been in my head quite a bit preparing this sermon. And if I were the devil, I would make work an idol. I would make striving the goal. I would make success as a result of work the pillar and the pinnacle of life. Because what that's going to do is that's going to wear everybody out. It's going to wipe everybody out to where they become worthless and useless, where their stress levels are sky high, where their hormones are out of balance, where they can't concentrate. And man, once I've got that nailed down, I can do anything. Once nobody can think straight, once everybody's confused, once everybody's immune systems and family lives are collapsing, man, I can go vomit over everything and they'll just suck it right up. If I'm the devil, that's what I do. It's one of the things I do. I can think of a lot of things I would do. It's not a job I want. But I would make work the idol. And scripturally, theologically, when it comes to what it means to be Christian, that mentality is the opposite of the gospel, the good news of Jesus. See, religious people want to work for their salvation. They want to work to reach God. They want to work to reach heaven. They think if I'm good enough. And it's this unhealthy thing that's in the back of all of our heads is, yeah, Jesus is good. He's helpful. He's part of this process. But we still think, I got to do it. I got to do it. I got to be in church. I got to study the Bible. I got to pray. I got to reach out. I got to do all this. And we're still trying to build up our pot of gold, this thing that God's going to open up his book and say, well, you did all these things. Welcome into my rest. And that's not what it's built on at all. In Hebrews, it says this, anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works. Rests from their works, just as God did from his. So from the beginning, when God said, I'm creating the whole universe, and then I'm creating a Sabbath, it wasn't just about physical rest. It was about something spiritual as well. Because what happens on a Sabbath, Chick-fil-A is a good example, and I know that's surrounded by politics, so I'm not endorsing or coming against Chick-fil-A, but I'm saying they take every seventh day off, and that business model seems to have worked for them. And so Scripture, and what that means is, whether you agree with them or not, whether they're right or not, is they're trusting some system outside of the standard business model. They are. They're trusting something else. And when you rest, and when you take a Sabbath and you say, I will not work, I am going to play, and you do it purposefully, intentionally for God, what you're saying is, I trust you, not my own hands. Because I could work one more day. I could work one more hour. I could make this thing happen. But a Sabbath says, I don't have to do that. I'm not the one making this thing happen. I'm not the one making my spiritual life good. I'm not the one that gets me into heaven. I'm not the one. And that's what a Sabbath does, is it shows trust. So at our 4 pillars at Daylight, we have service, study, worship, and rest. And what we mean by rest is we try to move at God's pace. And God has a pace for your life, and it isn't one of overwork and overcommitment and over anything. We try to be careful about trying to drive people to reach certain spiritual benchmarks at a certain pace. We're not interested in that. We're interested in you and God holding hands and walking through life at whatever pace that means. So when we do service, we talked about our projects. Service is our service projects. Study is our small groups. Worship is our worship services. Rest is we got nothing. We may have some fun activities. We may have barbecues or go bowling or whatever it is. But in general, as far as rest, we got nothing. And we're encouraging you to get nothing. We're encouraging you. Here's a few things, streamlined, simple stuff to get involved in. We don't want you here Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Saturday night. That's not what we're ever going to be as a church. We want you to take time to rest. Because from the very beginning, when God said, on the seventh day I've made it holy, it wasn't so that, we view the Sabbath in the old days as this act of worship towards God. It's like, I'm giving you the seventh day. And Scripture, Jesus tells us that's not at all what it was ever meant for. It was a gift from God to man. It says, this is going to be healthy for you. This is going to be helpful to you, is that sometimes you do nothing. You rest, you relax, you recreate.